Welcome to Juliet Stories. I'm so glad you've joined us today because you're in for a journey that will touch your heart and stay with you forever. In this story, you'll meet people you never expected to find together, with lives intertwined by fate, empathy, and harsh lessons. Prepare yourself to be captivated as we uncover a tale of compassion, redemption, and a twist of destiny that will make you rethink everything you know about kindness and judgment. It all began in a busy market in downtown Chicago. The streets were crowded with people moving quickly, making deals, laughing, and hustling in the sun. The air was thick with the scent of fresh produce and street food. But amidst the chaos, there was one person who stood still, unnoticed by most. She was an older woman, hunched over from years of hardship, her clothes ragged and worn. She stood by the corner, holding a sign that read, "Please help, I'm hungry." Her hands were trembling, her face weathered by time and pain, yet her eyes held a glimmer of dignity. This was Lily, a woman who had once been a part of the world that others admired. Now she was reduced to begging on the streets. But what they didn't know was that Lily was not just any beggar. She was a mother of a man who, unknown to the world, was a billionaire, a man who had everything, yet nothing compared to the love and care she had once given him. But those who knew her in the market only saw her as a poor, lonely beggar. They didn't know the life she once lived, or the sacrifices she had made for the man who would soon change her fate. Enter Emily, a young woman full of life and promise. She had a good job, a lovely apartment, and everything that many dream of. She had just finished her shift at a luxury boutique nearby, and was making her way through the market, looking for something to eat. Emily's world was far from the harsh realities of people like Lily. She was used to the finer things in life, and her view of the world was often clouded by privilege. As she walked through the crowd, she noticed Lily standing by the corner, her sign barely visible beneath the pile of bags in her arms. Without a second thought, Emily marched past her, annoyed by the sight of the beggar. Lily's presence made her uncomfortable. She hated seeing people like this. It made her feel guilty for her own good fortune. And in that moment, something inside her snapped. Without a care, she kicked Lily's sign out of the way, brushing past her with a cold, dismissive expression. She didn't think twice, not about the woman, not about the pain she might be causing. To Emily, Lily was just another inconvenience in her day. But what Emily didn't know was that her boss, a billionaire businessman named Ryan, was watching the entire scene from a nearby cafe. Ryan had been observing Lily for days, quietly watching the woman who had once been his mother. He had built his empire, yet the woman who had given birth to him, the woman who had cared for him when he had nothing, was now the very person he had lost touch with. She was the woman he had left behind. Ryan had made the decision long ago to distance himself from his past. He had built his wealth on his own, stepping away from the poverty and struggles that had once shaped him. But as he sat there, watching Lily get treated with such disregard, something inside him stirred. He knew he couldn't stay silent anymore. The emotions he had buried for so long began to surface, and he was filled with a new understanding of what he had lost, of the woman he had abandoned. Emily, oblivious to the eyes watching her, continued with her day, unaware of the consequences of her actions. She was living in a world where her reality was shaped by the luxury and comfort she had grown accustomed to. But what she didn't realize was that this was only the beginning of a life-changing journey that would force her to confront her own assumptions, her privilege, and her heart. The events that would unfold over the next few days would change her forever, and the world of both Emily and Lily would collide in ways neither of them could have imagined. And as for Lily, she stood there, trembling, not just from the cold, but from the heartbreak of it all. She had been abandoned by the very son she had sacrificed everything for. But little did Emily know, Lily was not just any beggar. She was the key to a powerful story, one that would teach both Emily and Ryan that empathy, compassion, and understanding were worth far more than all the riches in the world. The following day, Emily woke up with the weight of guilt hanging heavy on her heart. As she went through her morning routine, she couldn't shake the image of the beggar woman from the market. The woman's face, her tired eyes, and the trembling hands haunted Emily's thoughts. She had kicked her sign out of the way as if she were just another obstacle in her life. How could she have been so heartless? Emily tried to push the thoughts aside, convincing herself that she was just too busy with her own life to focus on someone else's problems. But deep down, she knew the truth. She had acted out of cruelty, out of a place of privilege, and it was eating at her. Meanwhile, across town, Lily was quietly going about her day. The pain of being a beggar in the streets had become so familiar to her that she could almost ignore the stares, the whispers, and occasional harsh words. But today, there was something different in the air. She had caught wind of something. Whispers from a passerby who had seen her in the market the day before. They spoke of a young woman, a rich, successful woman who had kicked her sign in the market and treated her like she was nothing. Lily's heart sank as she heard the stories. It wasn't the first time someone had treated her with such disregard, but this one felt different. There was something about this young woman, something about her that Lily couldn't quite place. Later that afternoon, Emily received a call at work. She had just finished a long meeting when her assistant, Sarah, passed the phone. Emily picked it up, not expecting anything out of the ordinary. But when she heard the voice on the other end, she froze. Ryan. The name sounded familiar, but it wasn't until the man continued that Emily realized who it was. Ryan was her boss, the billionaire businessman who owned the luxury boutique where Emily worked. Emily had never met him in person, but she knew about him. Everyone did. He was a legend in the business world, known for his sharp mind and even sharper instincts. She had always admired him from afar. Ryan told her that he needed to meet her at a cafe near her office that afternoon. His voice was low and serious, and Emily could sense the gravity in his tone. She agreed, her mind racing with the thought of why he would want to speak to her. Had she made a mistake at work? Was she in trouble? When Emily arrived at the cafe later that day, she was met with a sight she hadn't expected. Ryan was sitting at a table in the corner, his tall frame looming over the table as he took a sip of his coffee. His sharp features were softened by a quiet sadness, something Emily hadn't seen before in him. She hesitated for a moment, wondering if she was about to lose her job. But as she walked toward the table, Ryan stood up to greet her, his expression unreadable. "Please, sit," Ryan said, motioning to the chair across from him. Emily sat down, her palms clammy, her nerves on edge. "Do you remember what happened yesterday?" Ryan asked, his voice calm but piercing. Emily's heart sank. She knew exactly what he was referring to. The beggar, Lily. Her actions in the day before were now haunting her, and she could feel the weight of them bearing down on her. I didn't mean to," Emily began, her voice faltering. Ryan raised a hand, signaling for her to stop. "You don't need to explain," he said. "But there's something I think you need to understand." Ryan leaned in slightly, his eyes locking onto hers. "The woman you treated so cruelly yesterday," he began, his voice low, "is my mother. The woman you kicked aside is the woman who gave me everything. The woman who raised me, loved me, and sacrificed everything for me." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The beggar, Lily, was his mother? How was that even possible? The shock and confusion were written all over her face as she tried to process his words. Ryan continued, "My mother raised me in poverty, worked tirelessly to ensure I had everything I needed. She gave up her own dreams so that I could have a better life. But when I made it big, when I had everything I could have ever wanted, I turned my back on her. I cut ties, ashamed of my past. I convinced myself that I didn't need her anymore. I built my empire, but I lost the one person who mattered most. And now, she's living on the streets." Emily sat in stunned silence, the weight of Ryan's words crushing her. She couldn't speak, couldn't even form a sentence. Her mind was spinning, trying to comprehend what she had just learned. "I want you to understand something. Emily," Ryan said softly, "what you did to her yesterday, the way you treated her, it's not just about a poor woman on the street. It's about a mother who gave everything for her son. And now, she's a shadow of the woman she once was. I need you to understand that no amount of money, no amount of success can ever replace love. You can have everything in the world, but if you don't have empathy, if you don't have compassion, then it means nothing." Emily felt a tear slip down her cheek. She had never realized the depth of her actions, never understood how deeply she had hurt someone. The guilt she felt now was unbearable. Ryan stood up from the table. I don't expect you to make it right, but I hope this serves as a lesson in humility, a lesson in kindness, a lesson in never forgetting where you came from. As Ryan walked away, Emily was left alone with her thoughts. She had no idea how she was going to make amends. But one thing was certain, her life had just been changed forever. Emily sat motionless for several minutes after Ryan left the cafe. Her mind was in a state of chaos, trying to reconcile everything she had just learned. She had known Ryan to be a man of power and influence, but never once did she imagine that he was tied to a past so raw, so personal. She had always seen him as a successful businessman, the figurehead of the company, someone who seemed untouchable. And yet here he was, a son torn by the choices he'd made, living with the weight of abandoning his mother. And now, she, Emily, had unknowingly added to his pain by being so callous toward Lily, the woman who had given birth to him. As the reality of the situation sank in, Emily's guilt grew heavier. She had made a mistake, a big one, and now it was her responsibility to make things right. But where would she even begin? How could she undo the damage she had caused? The woman she had kicked aside in the market was not just a beggar. She was a mother, someone who had sacrificed everything for her child. How had Emily, someone who had been raised in comfort and privilege, been so blind to that? Over the next few days, Emily couldn't focus on her work. She tried to go through her usual routine, but her thoughts were consumed by the image of Lily standing on that street corner, her sign abandoned by Emily's cold boot. The guilt gnawed at her, and she knew she had to find a way to make amends. She decided to visit the market where she had first encountered Lily. She wasn't sure what she was hoping for, perhaps redemption, perhaps forgiveness, but she knew she had to do something. With a heavy heart, Emily made her way there, determined to find the woman she had wronged. When she arrived at the market, she searched the crowd, hoping to spot Lily among the throngs of people. It was early in the afternoon, and the market was as lively as ever. The streets were filled with vendors calling out their wares, children running between the stalls, and people haggling over prices. Emily's eyes darted from face to face, her heart pounding in her chest. She walked for what felt like hours, but there was no sign of Lily. The guilt inside her began to fester. Had she missed her? Was it too late? Just as she was about to give up, she spotted a familiar face in the distance. It was Lily, sitting by a fruit stall, her head down, as if waiting for someone to notice her. Without hesitation, Emily rushed over to her. Lily looked up as Emily approached, her face a mixture of weariness and indifference. Emily knelt down in front of her, her eyes filled with regret. "Lily," Emily said softly, her voice trembling, "I owe you an apology. A huge one. I didn't know who you were that day. I didn't know you were Ryan's mother. But that doesn't excuse what I did. I was cruel, and I'm so sorry." Lily didn't say anything at first. She just looked at Emily, her gaze unreadable. It was as if she was weighing the sincerity of the apology. Emily's heart raced, afraid that Lily would turn her away, that her words wouldn't be enough to make up for the hurt she had caused. But then, after long silence, Lily spoke. Her voice was soft but steady. "I've been living on these streets for a long time," she said, "and I've seen people like you come and go. People who don't even look at me, who pretend I'm invisible. But I've also seen the kindness in people who least expect it. And today, you came to me. You apologized. And that means more to me than you know." Emily felt a tear slip down her cheek. She had no words to express how much it meant to hear that. She reached out and gently took Lily's hand in hers. "I'll make it right," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion swirling inside her. "I don't know how yet, but I'll do everything I can to help." Lily nodded, her face softening. "You've already taken the first step," she said, "and that's what matters." From that moment on, Emily knew her journey had only just begun. She had made a mistake, yes, but she had also taken the first step toward redemption. It wouldn't be easy and it wouldn't be quick, but she was determined to make things right with Lily, with Ryan, and most importantly, with herself. Emily's journey had just begun, but she felt as if she had already taken the first step toward a different life. A life filled with lessons, pain, and most of all, growth. The guilt she had carried with her for days was beginning to lift. Not because the mistake she made was gone, but because she was finally taking responsibility. She wasn't running from it anymore. Instead, she was facing it head-on and trying to make things right. She began with small steps, reaching out to those who had once seemed so distant, so far removed from her world of luxury and comfort. Emily had always kept her distance from people in need, people who were struggling in ways she could never imagine. But now, she found herself drawn to those very people, eager to listen to their stories, to understand their struggles. It wasn't easy, and at times it felt overwhelming, but with every conversation, she felt herself growing. The first thing Emily did after her conversation with Lily was reach out to Ryan. She knew she had to apologize, not just for her actions, but for her ignorance, for the way she had treated Lily without ever considering the depth of her pain. It took her several attempts to get in touch with him, but when they finally spoke, Emily didn't sugarcoat her feelings. "Ryan, I owe you an apology," she said, her voice steady but sincere. "I've realized how wrong I was. Not just about Lily, but about everything, about how I've lived my life. I've been blind to the world outside of my own, and I know now that it's time for me to change that." Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Emily wasn't sure what to expect from him. He had every right to be angry, to turn his back on her completely. But when he finally spoke, his words were different from what she had imagined. "Thank you for saying that, Emily," he replied. "I can't tell you how much it means to hear you take responsibility. It's not easy to admit when you're wrong, but it's the first step toward making things right." The conversation continued, and they spoke for hours. Emily learned so much about Ryan, about the sacrifices he made, and about the pain he had carried for years. She learned about Lily's life, the sacrifices she had made to raise Ryan, and how she had ended up on the streets after being abandoned by the very son she had given everything for. Ryan's story was filled with emotion, but it wasn't filled with bitterness. Instead, it was filled with a longing for redemption, for reconciliation with the mother he had lost. Emily promised him that she would do everything she could to help him make things right, even if it meant stepping outside her comfort zone and giving up the life she had known. Over the next few weeks, Emily made a conscious effort to change her ways. She began volunteering at local shelters, working with homeless people, and helping those in need. She also started to visit Lily more often, bringing her food, sitting with her, and just listening. She learned that Lily had been through more than anyone could imagine, that her life had been filled with pain and loss, yet she still had hope. One afternoon, as Emily was sitting with Lily in the market, she asked her a question that had been on her mind for days. "Lily, why didn't you ever ask Ryan for help? Why didn't you reach out to him when you needed it?" Lily looked at her for a long time before replying. "I didn't want to be a burden," she said softly. "I didn't want him to think I was trying to take advantage of his success. I raised him to be strong, to be independent. I wanted him to have everything I couldn't give him, even if it meant I had to suffer in silence." Tears filled Emily's eyes as she listened to Lily's words. She had never truly understood what it meant to sacrifice, to give up everything for someone else's future. But now, as she looked at the woman who had raised Ryan, who had given up her own dreams for her sons, she understood. She understood the depth of love, of pain, and of the sacrifices that mothers make for their children. In that moment, Emily made a vow to herself. She would not only help Ryan reconcile with his mother, but she would also become the kind of person who understood the true meaning of kindness, of compassion, and of selflessness. She would make sure that Lily's sacrifices were not in vain, and that Ryan would never have to feel the pain of losing his mother again. Emily's transformation wasn't immediate, nor was it easy. The more she tried to make amends, the more she realized just how much she had taken her life for granted. The comfort, the privilege, the little things she had always assumed would be there. None of it had truly prepared her for the world outside her bubble. But with every passing day, as she volunteered and spent time with Lily, Emily began to see the world through different eyes. She spent countless hours talking with people in need, learning about their lives and their struggles. It wasn't just about giving them food or clothes. It was about listening to their stories, treating them with dignity, and offering them something far more valuable: respect. Emily learned that true empathy came from the heart, not from pity or charity. It came from understanding that everyone had a story, and no one's worth should be measured by the clothes they wore or the amount of money they had. But her journey was far from over. As Emily grew closer to Lily, she realized that there was still so much she didn't know about the older woman's past, her pain, and her reasons for keeping silent for so many years. Emily knew she had to help Lily reconnect with her son, Ryan, even though the path ahead was uncertain. She had heard Ryan speak about the guilt he carried, but Emily could see how much he wanted to make things right. He had built a life for himself, but it was clear that a part of him was still missing: his connection to his mother. It was one cold afternoon, weeks after Emily had started her journey of redemption, when she decided to make the next move. She knew she couldn't do this alone. She called Ryan, feeling the weight of the decision in her chest. "Ryan," she said softly into the phone, "I think it's time. Lily's ready. She wants to see you. I think you both need to face the truth of everything that happened." Ryan didn't answer immediately, and Emily's heart raced with anticipation. She knew he had been avoiding this conversation for years, but she also knew it was the only way for them to move forward. Finally, Ryan spoke. "I'm scared, Emily. I'm terrified of seeing her again. I've spent so long pretending she wasn't part of my life, pretending I could move on without her. What if it's too late?" Emily closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of Lily's face, the tired eyes, the quiet strength she had displayed despite everything life had thrown her way. It was never too late. It's never too late to make things right. "Ryan, you owe it to both of you." After a long pause, Ryan sighed. "Okay, I'll do it, but you'll have to help me." Emily's heart lifted. "Of course, I'll be there. I'll help you both." They arranged to meet the next day. Emily could feel the tension in the air as she made her way to the small apartment where Lily had been staying for the past few weeks. It was humble, nothing like the luxury Emily was accustomed to, but it had a warmth to it, a sense of peace. Emily knocked gently on the door, and Lily opened it with a soft smile. "Are you ready?" Emily asked. Lily nodded slowly. "I don't know if I'll ever be ready, but I know it's time. I know I can't keep hiding from my past, and neither can Ryan." Emily took a deep breath. "We're in this together." As they made their way to the cafe where Ryan would meet them, Emily couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. She was about to help two people who had been torn apart by years of silence, regret, and pain find their way back to each other. She knew it wasn't going to be easy. She knew there would be difficult conversations, tears, and even anger. But she also knew that healing could only begin when they faced each other and allowed themselves to truly see the pain they had caused each other. Ryan was already at the cafe when they arrived. He stood up as soon as he saw them, his face filled with a mixture of anticipation and fear. Emily watched him closely as he approached Lily, his eyes filled with emotion. He didn't say anything at first. Instead, he just stood there, as if waiting for something to happen. Lily took a step forward, her hands trembling slightly. Without a word, she reached out and placed her hand on Ryan's arm. Ryan didn't pull away. Instead, he looked at her, his eyes brimming with tears. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. "I should have never left you. I should have never let you go through all of that alone." Lily's eyes filled with tears, and she pulled him into a tight embrace. For the first time in years, they held each other, not as a son and a mother who had been torn apart by distance, but as two people who had found their way back to each other. Even after everything that had happened, Emily stood quietly to the side, tears streaming down her face. She had done it. She had helped bring them together. But this was just the beginning. She knew that the road ahead would still be difficult, but they had taken the first step toward healing. And for the first time, Emily realized that true redemption wasn't about erasing mistakes. It was about facing them, learning from them, and doing everything you can to make things right. The reunion between Ryan and Lily was just the beginning, but Emily knew that true healing couldn't happen overnight. There were years of distance, anger, and pain to work through. As much as the first meeting was emotional, Emily understood that the real challenge lay in the days and weeks to come. In the days that followed, Ryan visited Lily regularly. At first, the conversations were awkward, full of hesitations and silences. There were no grand gestures of forgiveness, no immediate reconciliation. Instead, there were simple moments, the awkwardness of sitting together at the kitchen table, the uncomfortable glances, the quiet apologies. But in those small moments, Emily could see that something was changing. They were beginning to break down the walls they had both built around their hearts. Ryan began opening up to Lily in ways he hadn't before. He talked about the guilt he carried for abandoning her. He told her about his struggles, his regrets, and how he tried to build a success without her by his side. And slowly, Lily started to share her own pain. The years of loneliness, the nights she had spent wondering if her son ever thought of her, the sacrifices she had made, and the pain of losing him. They cried together, not just for the years lost, but for the love that had been hidden beneath the resentment and bitterness. And in those tears, Emily saw the beginning of something beautiful. It wasn't going to be easy, but they were on the road to healing. As for Emily, she found herself constantly learning, constantly growing. She was still doing everything she could to make amends. But now, she was also facing her own flaws and limitations. She had spent so much of her life taking things for granted, but now she had learned the value of hard work, empathy, and understanding. One afternoon, while Emily was sitting with Lily at her apartment, the older woman turned to her, her voice gentle but filled with a wisdom that came only from years of experience. "Emily," Lily said, "I'm glad you came into our lives. You've helped me more than you know. But you also need to know something. You can't keep trying to fix everyone. You can't save the world. The only person you can change is yourself." Emily paused, the weight of Lily's words settling deep within her. She had spent so much time focusing on helping others, on trying to right the wrong she had caused, that she had forgotten to focus on herself. She had been running from her own issues, her own fears, but now she knew that the real work had to start from within. Lily continued, "You have a good heart, but don't forget to take care of yourself too. The journey you're on isn't just about making things right for others. It's about finding peace within yourself." Emily nodded, feeling the truth in Lily's words. She had always been so focused on fixing things. But now, for the first time, she understood that true change came from within. She couldn't keep running from her past or from the guilt she carried. She needed to face it, accept it, and move forward. With each passing day, Emily grew stronger. She continued to volunteer, to spend time with Lily, and to help Ryan in his journey to rebuild his relationship with his mother. But now, Emily was also focused on herself. She began to understand that self-compassion was just as important as the compassion she showed others. And as Ryan and Lily began to rebuild their relationship, Emily found herself growing in ways she had never expected. She had started this journey with the desire to make amends for her past mistakes, but she was beginning to realize that the true gift was in learning how to forgive herself. As the weeks passed, Emily found herself at a crossroads. Her journey of redemption had brought her closer to Lily and Ryan, but it also opened her eyes to her own life and what she wanted moving forward. The work she had done in the market, her time spent volunteering, and the conversations with Lily had all started to shift her perspective. She had helped repair a fractured relationship, but now she realized that she needed to rebuild her own life. The guilt she had carried was no longer at the forefront of her mind. She had accepted her mistakes, apologized, and done everything she could to make things right. But there was still one thing missing, her sense of purpose. For so long, Emily had lived in a world of luxury, driven by status and material success. But now, as she looked around her, she couldn't help but feel that there had to be more to life than this. Emily knew she wanted to continue helping others. She had found a sense of fulfillment in volunteering and being there for people who needed someone to listen. But how could she turn this passion into something more? How could she make a real difference, not just in the lives of those she helped, but in her own? It was on a quiet evening, as Emily sat with Lily in her small but cozy apartment, that the idea began to take root. They were talking about life, about the changes they had both experienced, when Lily looked at her and said something that struck Emily deeply. "You know, Emily, you've done more than just help me. You've helped Ryan too. You've helped him see the importance of family, of love, and of forgiveness. You've given him something he didn't even know he needed. You've started a journey of healing, and that's something rare." Emily smiled, a warmth filling her chest as she listened to Lily's words. It was true. She had played a part in bringing Ryan and Lily back together. But it was more than that. She had helped herself along the way. She had learned that redemption wasn't just about others. It was about herself too. And now, Emily realized it was time to take that next step. The following week, Emily made an important decision. She decided to quit her job at the luxury boutique, the one she had worked at for years, and begin a new chapter of her life. It wasn't an easy choice. She had enjoyed the work, the prestige, and the comfort that came with it, but it had never truly been her passion. She realized that her heart was in the work she had been doing with people who had lost their way, who needed someone to believe in them. With a new sense of purpose, Emily began looking into ways she could turn her passion for helping others into a career. She reached out to local organizations, looked into counseling programs, and explored opportunities to work in social services. She knew it wouldn't be an easy path, but she was ready. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was on the right path. Meanwhile, Ryan and Lily continued to grow closer. Ryan made a conscious effort to spend more time with his mother, working to the pain of the past and focusing on the future. He made sure Lily was well taken care of, providing her with a comfortable place to stay, and ensuring that she was never alone. Emily had helped him realize the importance of family, and he wasn't going to waste any more time. As for Emily, she took on new responsibilities in her personal life as well. She continued to visit Lily, spending time together and helping her navigate her way through a new chapter. The bond they shared was now deeper than ever, built on mutual understanding, trust, and love. One day, as Emily sat with Lily in the small cafe where they often met, Lily turned to her and said, "I always knew there was something special about you, Emily. You didn't just come into our lives to fix things. You came into our lives to change them. You've made us see what really matters." Emily smiled, feeling the warmth of Lily's words deep in her heart. "I didn't know it at the time, but I think you're right," she said. "I thought I was just helping you and Ryan. But in the end, I think I was helping myself the most." With a renewed sense of purpose, Emily knew that her journey was far from over. The road ahead was still uncertain, filled with challenges and unknowns, but she was no longer afraid. She had found her way back to herself, and that was the greatest gift of all. Emily's decision to leave her comfortable life behind was not an easy one, but it was one that filled her with an unexpected sense of relief. For the first time, she felt like she was moving towards something real, something that aligned with her values, her passion, and the lessons she had learned from her experiences with Lily and Ryan. Her first few days without the luxury boutique were filled with uncertainty. She spent hours researching social service programs, community outreach organizations, and courses on counseling. It wasn't an easy transition, and there were times when Emily questioned whether she had made the right choice. The stability and security of her previous job had been comforting, but she knew deep down that it wasn't fulfilling her in the way she had hoped. One afternoon, while browsing online for volunteer opportunities, Emily stumbled upon an ad for a counseling program that offered training for social workers in underprivileged communities. It wasn't exactly what she had envisioned, but something about it spoke to her. She had spent so much time focused on fixing things for others, but this program was about understanding the complexities of people's lives, about learning how to support them through their struggles, not just offer solutions. Emily felt a spark of excitement. This was the path she had been looking for. After a few weeks of studying the program and discussing it with Lily, Ryan, and a few close friends, Emily decided to apply. She knew it would take time and it wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was heading in the right direction. Ryan continued to grow closer to his mother, Lily. He was spending more time with her than ever before, and the bond they were rebuilding seemed to grow stronger every day. Emily saw the healing happening between them, and it filled her with hope. But there was also a sense of bittersweetness. As Ryan rebuilt his relationship with Lily, Emily knew that she was also building her own future. She wasn't just helping them. She was rebuilding herself. One evening, Emily and Lily sat in a small apartment, sipping tea and talking about their lives. They had been through so much together. And in this quiet moment, Emily realized just how far they had come. She had walked into this journey not knowing what to expect, But now, she was beginning to see the beauty in the transformation. "You've come a long way," Lily said, her voice soft. "I always knew you had something special in you. Emily, you've helped me more than you know, but I think you've helped yourself the most. You found your purpose." Emily smiled, the weight of Lily's words sinking in. "I don't know if I found my purpose yet," she replied, "but I do know that I'm on the right path. It's scary, but it feels right. I'm doing what I've always wanted to do, helping people. And for the first time, I feel like I'm not just helping others. I'm helping myself too." Lily nodded, her eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "It's a beautiful thing, finding your way. But remember, Emily, it's not just about the destination. It's about the journey. Every step you take, every lesson you learn, it's all part of the process." Emily felt a sense of peace in those words. She had been so focused on fixing everything and making things right. But now she understood that life wasn't about rushing to the finish line. It was about learning, growing, and embracing each step along the way. The next few months were filled with challenges, but also with small victories. Emily completed the counseling program, worked with local organizations, and found herself more connected to the world around her than she had ever been before. She had finally found a place where she belonged, a place where she could make a real difference. As for Ryan and Lily, their relationship continued to blossom. Ryan had finally come to terms with his past, and he worked hard to make things right with his mother. Together, they began to heal, and Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in the role she had played in bringing them together. But the road ahead was still long. Emily knew that there would be more challenges, more obstacles, and more moments of doubt. But she also knew that she had the strength to face whatever came her way. She had learned that redemption wasn't just about fixing what was broken. It was about learning to love and accept yourself, flaws and all. One evening, as Emily sat by the window in her small apartment, watching the sun set, she thought about everything she had been through. The journey had been difficult, but it had also been the most rewarding thing she had ever done. She had learned the true meaning of forgiveness, of redemption, and of what it meant to be truly alive. And as she looked ahead to the future, Emily knew that her story was only just beginning. She was ready to embrace whatever came next, confident that she had finally found the path that was meant for her. Emily's life was now grounded in purpose. The days of living aimlessly, caught in a whirlwind of luxury and comfort, seemed like distant memories. She had made a commitment to herself to live a life that truly mattered, one that reached beyond material success, and embraced the true meaning of fulfillment. The new chapter of her life was both exhilarating and challenging. Her work with the local community and her involvement in the counseling program began to take off. She felt energized every time she worked with people who were struggling, who felt lost, or who had been abandoned. She could finally say with certainty that she was doing what she was meant to do. But even with all the changes, Emily couldn't ignore the internal tug of fear. She was used to the comfort of knowing exactly where her life was headed, but now she was navigating unfamiliar waters, unsure of what each day might bring. She had learned to embrace the uncertainty, but at times, it still overwhelmed her. One day, Emily received an unexpected call. It was from Ryan. "Emily," he said, "I know we've both been on our own paths recently, but I think we need to talk." She could hear the urgency in his voice, and it made her heart race. "What's going on?" "I'll come by your place in a bit," Emily said, trying to steady her nerves. Ryan arrived that afternoon, his expression tense. As he sat down across from her, Emily could see the weight on his shoulders. "I've been thinking," he began. "I've been working hard to rebuild things with my mom, but it's been harder than I expected. There are days when it feels like we're making progress, but then something happens, and it feels like we're back at square one. I feel like I'm always walking on eggshells, trying not to mess things up again." Emily listened intently, sensing the depth of Ryan's struggles. She had witnessed his transformation, but she knew that healing was never a straight path. "What are you afraid of, Ryan?" Emily asked gently. He looked away, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm afraid that it's too late. I've spent so much time building my empire, focusing on everything else, that now, I'm not sure if I can fix things with her. She's changed, I've changed, and I'm afraid I'll lose her forever." The vulnerability in his words struck Emily deeply. She could see that Ryan was a man of strength, but like everyone else, he had his fears, his doubts. It wasn't just about the success he had achieved. It was about the people he loved and the relationships that mattered most. Ryan, she said softly, you've already made a huge step by reconnecting with your mom. It's not about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about showing up, being present, and loving each other, even when it's hard. The fact that you're here today, talking about this, means you haven't given up. Ryan's eyes softened, and for the first time, Emily saw a flicker of hope. You're right, he said, his voice steadier now. Maybe I just needed to hear it from someone else. And Emily realized in that moment that this was exactly why she had made the choices she had. She had found herself in a place where she could not only help others, but also offer support and understanding that she herself had once needed. Later that evening, after Ryan had left, Emily reflected on their conversation. She understood now that while she had found her purpose in helping others, she was still on her own journey. It was about constantly learning, evolving, and accepting that healing didn't always happen on a timeline. People's wounds didn't just disappear. They took time, compassion, and patience. The next few days were full of small but meaningful victories. Ryan continued his work with Lily, and Emily's counseling efforts began to expand, reaching more people who were looking for guidance. She had found her place, and as much as the uncertainty remained, she knew she was exactly where she needed to be. One afternoon, as Emily sat in the park, watching the sunlight filter through the trees, she received another call, this time from Lily. Emily, I need you to come by, Lily said, her voice filled with emotion. I think it's time. Emily's heart raced as she hurried over. When she arrived, Lily was waiting outside, her eyes shining with a mixture of joy and relief. I've been thinking a lot, Lily said, about Ryan, about everything we've been through. And I realized something. I spent so many years holding on to the pain, to the loss. But now, I want to move forward. I want to rebuild, not just with Ryan, but with myself. I've carried all this hurt for so long, but I'm ready to let it go. Emily stood there, a lump in her throat. She could feel the weight of Lily's words, the depth of the journey she had walked. Lily wasn't just talking about rebuilding her relationship with Ryan. She was talking about reclaiming her own life, her own peace. And in that moment, Emily understood something even deeper. The heart of change wasn't just about fixing the broken pieces. It was about letting go, forgiving, and choosing to move forward no matter how hard it was. Lily's words echoed in her mind as they walked together, side by side, into the future they were both learning to embrace. There would be more challenges, more struggles, but they were no longer alone in them. The seasons changed, and with them, Emily's life continued to transform. As the winter snow melted away and the warmth of spring began to settle in, she felt a sense of clarity and peace she had never known before. She had spent months rebuilding the pieces of her life, helping others, and working through her own struggles. The journey was far from over. But for the first time, she could breathe without the weight of guilt dragging her down. Lily and Ryan had made incredible progress. The mother and son who had once been torn apart by years of silence and pain were now slowly, but surely finding their way back to each other. They met regularly, shared stories, and began to rediscover the bond that had always existed beneath the years of hurt. Ryan had learned to let go of his pride, to embrace his mother with open arms, and to show her the love and respect she deserved. And Lily, though scarred by the past, had begun to open her heart again, to trust not just Ryan, but herself. Emily had played a pivotal role in their reconciliation, but she also knew that their healing was their own. She had helped to guide them, but they were the ones who had to do the hard work of rebuilding. Emily had come to understand that her own journey was no different. She had spent so much time focused on helping others that she had neglected her own emotional well-being. But now, she was learning to focus on her own growth, her own healing. Her counseling work continued to expand. She was no longer just helping people work through their trauma. She was teaching them how to embrace change, to move forward with hope, and to let go of the past. Every day, she met people who were struggling, people who needed someone to listen, someone to believe in them. And Emily had found the strength to be that person. But as she poured herself into her work, she also learned the importance of setting boundaries and making time for herself. She realized that to truly help others, she had to be healthy and whole herself. One day, as Emily sat at a small cafe with Lily, sipping on hot tea, they reflected on everything they had been through together. "You've come so far," Lily said, her voice filled with pride. "You've changed so much, Emily, not just on the outside, but on the inside. I can see the difference in you. You're not the same person you were when we first met." Emily smiled softly, her eyes reflecting the depth of Lily's words. "I don't think any of us are the same person we were when we started this journey," she replied. "We've all grown in ways we never expected. And I think that's what life is all about, growing, changing, and learning to embrace the person you're becoming." Ryan joined them a little while later, his face filled with a sense of contentment that Emily hadn't seen before. He had taken the time to heal, to focus on what really mattered. He had let go of the bitterness he had carried for so long, and had embraced the love that was waiting for him. As the three of them sat together, sharing stories and laughter, Emily realized that the true meaning of family wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about never making mistakes or never feeling pain. It was about love, forgiveness, and the willingness to fight for each other, even when the world seemed against them. They had all been broken in different ways, but they had found healing not in perfection, but in their shared experiences. They had learned that the road to redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about accepting it, learning from it, and moving forward with grace. Emily knew that her journey was still unfolding. She had made a commitment to herself to live a life of service, of compassion, and of growth. But she also knew that she couldn't do it alone. She had Ryan, she had Lily, and she had the strength that came from knowing her own worth. The future was still uncertain. There would be new challenges, new obstacles, and new opportunities for growth. But Emily was no longer afraid. She had faced her past, she had embraced her present, and now she was ready for whatever the future would bring. As the sun set on the horizon, Emily stood up, looking at the world around her. The journey was long, but it had been worth it. She had found her purpose, and she knew that she would continue to walk the path of healing and love every step of the way.